and welcome to this very special edition of the Irish Wrestling Podcast. My name is Mark O'Brien. I'm joined today by somebody who's incredibly well regarded worldwide, somebody I've been a very big fan of from his days all the way going back to Ring of Honor, TNA, somebody who's come into the public zeitgeist in a far greater manner over the last number of years, particularly since around COVID when he was working for the WWE as a producer, then over to a quick sojourn over in AEW. Now he's becoming into the public zeitgeist once more as part of TNA. He's also an incredibly well regarded trainer as well as producer. I'm joined by the one and the only Ace Steel. Ace, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great, Mark. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem at all. No problem at all. Listen, as I said, I have been a fan of yours going back to all the way towards, I suppose, the early 2000s when I first kind of came across TNA. And obviously you were working with as NWA TNA at the time. You're also working for various different promotions around that time, around Ring of Honor. You're particularly kind of entrenched with the likes of CM Punk and other Chicago-based wrestlers. But what I didn't know when I was kind of researching ahead of this, how far back your actual career has gone, going back to all the way to 1991. Now, as somebody who's born in 1992, that was kind of a bit of a shock to me. So,
wow.
Yeah, sorry to kind of give you land that with you at the start, but as somebody who's had such an incredibly varied career, and people maybe my part of the world who might not be as familiar with, can you give us a bit of an in-depth view into how you kind of started in the business?
I began I was just a fan like most kids, growing up that loved wrestling. And it just seemed to be the one and only thing I wanted to do and excel at. And I am exactly one of those people that if I'm not interested in it, I'm just not going to give something 100%. I can't fake it. I can't fake it until I make it. I've got to be 100% invested in it. And professional wrestling specifically was the one thing I entirely wanted to do from teachers in school, right? The movie Young Guns. This is how you already dated me, so it doesn't matter.
Sorry.
The movie Young Guns had come out with Emilio Estevez, and I was just so in that movie and Billy and the Kid. And I went to do an English paper on it. And my teacher said, "Why don't you just do something on pro wrestling?" And I'm like, "I'm so bored with doing wrestling." She's like, "Yeah, but you love that." So, and I mean, it just spawned from there, like from being just a skinny kid leaving high school. And I did have a teacher or two that believed in me, that said, if you put your mind to it, you can do it. And sure enough, immediately graduating, I picked a school in Chicago. I was actually telling my wife about this the other day, how we chose the schools we went to, because she was actually trained by Harley Race years later, after I had already established myself with him as friends, and he being my agent and all. But I had looked at many other camps and things, and Windy City Wrestling in Chicago was prominent on the sports channel.
Mm-hmm.
And we would watch them in 1988 when I was just a really big wrestling fan. And Paul Heyman was there with the Midnight Express and the Battle of the Bam Bams, Terry Gordy and Bam Bam Bigelow. So this spelled real wrestling to me. This was like any other, just not as extravagant with the production and such.
Mm.
I had no idea what independent wrestling was. I mean, I don't think on the cusp of what it was. It was outlaw wrestling if you went to big shows, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's where I began. And I went to school, learned. you gotta learn to work. You gotta go to school before you can learn to work, was their slogan. And I wrestled there for a couple of years, and then just branched out from there and moved around the US a little bit.
No, it was absolutely awesome. And like kind of when I was going back to kind of research ahead of this time, like guy who's people would know you as such a Chicago guy now. Then going back to research, seeing your name as like the LA connection, the Hollywood hard bodies, like obviously the Hollywood blondes and stuff would probably be going in around that time with WCW, and that's different type of wrestling at that time. But what was that like? I suppose you're having to, I don't know, portray something you're probably not as such. You're not a Californian surfer kind of guy or whatever.
No, but that was our idea. That was our idea that we wanted to do. No one made us do that. We were trying to come up with, because everybody, if you could picture this, everybody in Chicago was a Chicago guy.
Yeah.
So we wanted to be different. So there's actually a picture hanging up in the foundation in the school of myself and my old tag partner, where we've got these wacky suspender looking outfits on, and we had some guy design it. And, I've had Jody Threat was in a week ago, and she goes, "What the hell is that?" I'm like, "Well, we had these designed. This is one of our first costumes we had." And we just wanted to be different from anyone around town. Because like I said, you could definitely hear in people's voices. You can probably hear it in mine if you know Chicago, the dialect and such, that everybody there sounded like everybody, looked like everybody, whether they were big, small, whatever it was. We just aimed to be different. So we were trying just different things until finally it's like, we need to protect Chicago. Nobody's coming out of Chicago giving this place a good name.
Awesome, awesome. And yeah, listen, you thrived off the back of that, then off that kind of initial launching point, then taking over St. Paul Championship Wrestling, where you kind of began not just wrestling, but you're also training at that time as well. So you're kind of becoming an instructor and coach. There's so many people that kind of came under your remit, I suppose, at the time, when it later became the Steel Domain. So the likes of CM Punk came through with there. The likes of Colt Cabana came through there. So obviously you're probably in your late 20s at this stage. Like, what was that like coming in being a wrestler as well as a trainer at that stage? Or certainly you wouldn't have been much older than 30 if I'm not mistaken. What was that like? Kind of suddenly you're a wrestler on the one side and you're a trainer and you're kind of creating this new wave of talent from Chicago.
I don't think I thoroughly embraced the role as a trainer. The school was specifically for myself and Danny Dominion to further our careers. We realized we weren't doing enough at this age, but now was the time. And in 1998, when we made this decision, when I moved back, I had been living in Kansas City for a short time, for about 5 years. And we realized that now was the time. Let's go after this. We're not getting any younger. And we found a ring, put the school up. And it's almost like now, if you put the ring up, if you build it, they will come. The Field of Dreams idea, and everyone flocked to us. Like Adam Pierce was in my school the other night, and Adam graciously put me over for the things I've taught him, which is funny because now I'm on the flip side of asking him TV things because he's been entrenched in television wrestling for so long that he came along at a time when we were young and hungry, and he was just as young and hungry, just a few years removed from starting in the business when we opened that school. So you just had a lot of young and hungry guys, and we were able to show them the way, so to speak. And I can tell you right now, I'm 100% different coach when it comes to my in-ring and the things I've learned over the years. But I don't know that I fully embraced what the trainer coach was back then when I just looked at us all like, let's elevate, high tides raise all ships type thing.
Spot on. But again, you're at the same time, you're a young guy. What can you do? Like, you can only know what you know well. And you've obviously
exactly
got personal aspirations as well. So, but at the same time, like, while in your own words, maybe not be fully immersed in it or fully diving into the coaching aspect, you've obviously created a huge loyalty from people you train, people who you so well regarded. The fact that you're saying that Adam Pierce is dropping into your school now, going to put you over for your new talents and whatnot. So that's really, really cool. Like, at the same time, you were still wrestling, and obviously there was a couple of different promotions kind of coming on the horizon. Then you have NWA, TNA, as they're appearing down in Nashville in the Asylum, if I'm not mistaken. And then you also had Ring of Honor. And during that time, you formed with CM Punk again, like obviously as a theme throughout your career, being one of your students, obviously, again, well regarded. You formed the Hate Breed as part of a tag team angle. You work with both TNA and Ring of Honor. Like, I suppose you're the elder statesman of the team, but like, what was that like? I suppose it was a strange period in wrestling where like WCW's gone away, ECW's gone away, but you got these two kind of rival startup promotions that both have this sense of like an underground feel. And there's a huge amount of talent who are probably in the same generation trying to find a spot, be it like Samoa Joe and Bryan Danielson and whatnot. What was it like during that time, both teaming with students, working with students, or I suppose being in this kind of underground movement as such?
Well, I can tell you, I remember exactly where I was when WCW folded when, the simulcast Nitro Raw. I was down here actually in Florida working for my real job at the time and sitting in a bar and grill eating wings and looked up at the television. I had them put Nitro on and I just sunk in my chair and I thought, holy hell, I'm trying to make it in this industry. And now that promotion is defunct. Where are all these wrestlers going to go and wrestle? And I'm just trying to break in. So you give that a few years and again, networking, you find people and that's exactly what brings us to these places of Ring of Honor and NWA TNA. Ring of Honor, I don't know if I could describe it with my words so well. Excuse me.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Of how hungry we all were, of how like what machine. And with my school, I say this a lot. It's very hot in there. There's one giant drum fan, and everyone's like, "It's so hot." I said, "Because I'm building machines. I want to build wrestling machines." And I can tell you 100%, all of us were wrestling machines that worked for Ring of Honor. If you weren't a wrestling machine back then, like that was it. Like we all looked different. We all had a different. There's a little bit of a similar style in a lot of things.
Yeah.
It was just a love of wrestling and what I wrestled different than Punk did, than Bryan Danielson, than Joe. We all had our own move sets and own things to do and respected each other. And Roderick Strong and the early Jimmy Jacobs and Alex Shelley. Like, think of all these guys that were thrown in the mix. Matt Seidel and Delirious at one point.
Yeah.
We just all embodied a certain hunger that it was just insane to see that. And then when TNA came along, it was the perfect idea with more money than Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
Excuse me. That they started to use a lot of the different, and of course,
yeah,
the people that have made names in WWE that have now left there and moved on. You had that, but I think the X division is what it definitely, and to this day, sets apart TNA from any and everything. Is that style, that X division style, which really spawns a little more off what Ring of Honor was doing as well. So when AJ Styles comes in, and he was a part of the early Ring of Honor. Yeah. When, there's Low Key, there's, Jerry Lynn. You cannot forget Jerry Lynn, the awesome Jerry Lynn in the early X division. Going into that, like, it just, again, that hunger that we all had to prove, it was a proving ground. We all wanted to prove the world, because none of us, except for Joe, none of us were giant people. None of us were giant people. We weren't your big, giant road warrior looking guys. Or even when I went to Japan, Masawa's a massive dude. So is Kobashi. Like, these guys are huge, and none of us were really that, to where you look at the norm now, and even now I could be a sizable guy because the trajectory has changed in our business.
Yeah.
So I mean, just putting focus on the hunger that we all had. We were all machines, and we all wanted to get better, be better, and be noticed for our craft.
Yeah, I've spoken with the likes of Alex Shelley and Carrie Silken and a few other people over from that time over the last number of weeks. And each of them kind of said the same thing. And just in terms of, there was almost like blinders are on, in terms of everybody around you was competing, but everybody had a kind of shared love. It wasn't necessarily working towards a collective goal, but everybody was hell-bent and determined on making what they were doing the best they could possibly do, and it kind of rubbed off on everybody around us. That was really, really cool that time. You've touched on it there a minute ago. He's a guy on your chest. He's a guy over your left shoulder, I believe. There's a poster up on the wall there. Harley Race. So you were a huge part of his promotion. He launched around about 2003, if I'm not mistaken, World League Wrestling. So you talked at the start, as you mentioned, he was your agent as well as your manager at the time. He also brought you over to Noah at a time where Noah was kind of freshly launched. You've still got the kind of the four pillars. You've got this is when the Kent is at his height, and you're facing the likes of Sawa. You're facing Akira True. You're facing like Kenta Kobashi. Then you're facing proper Kenta in 2005, the GHC junior heavyweight title.
Yes, sir.
And that run was obviously awesome for you in terms of your career and kind of being exposed to these different talents and whatnot. What was that whole run like, I suppose, being part of Noah?
Very surreal. Very surreal. I mean, I still go back to the day I finally got to Japan. So, to be honest with you, and I've said this many times before, and it still holds true, it is the only thing at that point that I realized I really wanted to do with my career was go to Japan and work there. I never thought I would wrestle for WWE because of size. I never thought that was my goal. I thought I'd be a great territorial worker, but missed that by a couple of years. But getting to Japan, the Guerreros, the Malenkos, seeing 1, 2, 3 Kid, Jerry Lynn, and those guys over there, the junior heavyweights. I'm a junior heavyweight. So to get there, and although Noah was, basically all Japan with more of a focus on junior heavyweights, it was just awesome. And they were the top promotion at the time. And I'm so fortunate that I got to be there, experience it, wrestle the best. I mean, you can't beat who I was able to step in the ring with, and it, can never be replicated at all.
No, 100%. And you're also representing Harley Race when you're over there. You're kind of his representative in Japan. You're the guy he's chosen to be the focal point of that. Like, what does that mean to you on a personal level? Somebody you're obviously very close with. And I suppose everybody who's got a brain in wrestling has a huge amount of admiration and respect for as well.
Well, that meant a great deal. It means so much now that when I think back upon it, like at that point. So really what it meant for me is I didn't have the stamp of any legend on my career. I'm not second generation. I didn't train. I trained at a decent wrestling school, a prominent school in the Chicagoland area. And Christopher Daniels had come from that school, a guy by the name of Kevin Quinn, who's a little bit lesser known, but had gotten around the business and trained people in Chicago as well. But no one had ever just said, you should, use this guy or do this and that with this guy. And I made it my mission for Harley Race had seen me wrestle actually a couple of times. One he vaguely remembered, and the other one he definitely remembered. and shook my hand and gave me a great one of the greatest compliments I've ever gotten about my work. And I then made it my focus to start wrestling for him and make that connection. Like I sought out what I was looking for. I wanted to be in Japan, and Harley was the connection. And it's pretty much just a handshake deal. He loved my work. I'm a transplant of his. I was already trained and working. And then he embraced me into the fold like one of his own. So, and that meant such a great deal to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's something he didn't have to do either. I think obviously credit to yourself as well. And like the fact that I suppose you took a break from wrestling kind of the mid 2000s onwards, but you did come back to WLW under his purview later on in 2011 or 2012. You had a really cool kind of series of matches with William Regal while he was contracted with WWE. Like, again, I'm 2011, 2012, I was chasing a rugby dream, so I was kind of checked out of the business. So foolishly chasing a rugby dream for other people's approval, should have stuck with wrestling. But anyway, I wasn't aware of these matches until the last couple of weeks when I was kind of watching them back.
Oh,
how did that whole thing come about? Given that he's a contracted WWE talent, I assume it's to do with like the regard Harley was held within it, and then you being brought back from, I suppose, a sabbatical, for want of a better word, from the wrestling space.
Correct. I was in hiding. I had met William Regal. We estimate, and I could look it up to see the same year I worked on NWA TNA was the year I met William Regal, which was, I believe, 03. It was 02 or 03. I forget. But we had all traveled to a Dave Taylor camp. Dave Taylor had week-long camps in Peachtree, Georgia. And myself, Chris Hero, CM Punk, and another friend of ours from Milwaukee, the esteemed Derek St. Holmes, we traveled down to learn British wrestling from Dave Taylor.
Awesome.
And on the Thursday of that week, I had gone on Wednesday to wrestle for TNA. So I had to leave the camp for one day, go up and work, come back down. So I drove up and back myself. And that Thursday, standing there when we walked in was Fit Finley and William Regal. Okay. Now, Fit's very stiff even to this day, and I know him. Hey, Fit, long time. Yeah, great, see you. And he'd walk by.
Yeah.
But Regal has been nothing but a friend and a mentor since that day. Like, he's always willing to give advice over the years. I would see him over the years at WWE. He would follow my career from that day because he thought to himself, these gentlemen took the time, and I use that term loosely, the gentlemen, I'm kidding. These men took their career so seriously that they sought out a guy like Dave Taylor, who, unless you research, don't realize that he would have trained. He helped Regal along. He's been wrestling since he was 16. Yeah. His dad was in the, you can just go back with the lineage of these guys. And that we sought that out to better our craft. It was to better my craft. It wasn't to hear how good I am. It was to learn British wrestling, which is a style that I love, the physical style of it. And, from guys like, I didn't realize I'd run into Fit Finley. None of that ever occurred to us. We just thought we're going to go learn from Dave Taylor and learn some awesome uppercuts. And all these years, and it even plays into my current time in the world when I got back into the industry. It really amounted to Harley Race had been doing week-long camps himself. Like, it was a unique situation where for years he was the only person that could bring representatives from Pro Wrestling Noah, then later New Japan Pro Wrestling. Someone from WWE would come down, and then possibly someone from another prominent independent promotion somewhere along the week to critique and look at talent. And that even happened up into, close to his death, where he was not the WWE out of respect would send somebody to his camp because it was Harley. But because of that camp, William Regal was picked that year to be the scout.
Okay.
Which results in a text message. Hey, they want me to wrestle. Would you like to wrestle?
Okay.
And I'm like, what? So again, I was in hiding. I was out of the limelight, out of the spotlight completely. But when someone like William Regal asked if you want to go toe to toe, you say yes. And so I got in as good a shape as I could a couple of months away from that. And lo and behold, the same thing happened the next year. Hey, doing it again. I said, man, you're killing me. So I got myself in shape again, and even better shape this time because that match was a little more active. The first one, I was worried about my wind. I was worried about a lot of things, but just when someone like that asks of you to put the boots on and lace them up, in my mind, you just do it. I don't care, You do the best you can, because you're never going to get that opportunity again.
It's obviously an incredible compliment to you as the impression you've made of people over the kind of previous decades, because you're 20 years into the business at that stage, despite your sabbatical. But I suppose wrestling is the number one cliche in terms of, like, I can't remember the movie off the top of my head, but like just when I'm out, they pull me back in. So you get that dangling carrot, and suddenly you're back in it with full head steam. Just I'm going to touch on your kind of WWE run then. Obviously, you made a number of different appearances throughout the 2000s, be it like dark matches, velocity, and whatnot. But there's a couple of funny segments. Like, I actually walked back. But yeah, sure. Obviously there was the 2004 segment where you're working with the likes of Eric Bischoff and Eugene, and you get your haircut. But the one segment I vividly remember was in 2007. Obviously the famous hairbutt segment where you're portraying Donald Trump against Rosie O'Donnell. Like, I mean, who would know? Like 15 years later, the whole world would go insane, and like that. Do you know what I mean? Like it's yeah. So. What's it like looking back in these segments now and reminiscing? It's probably something you enjoyed in terms. It's a bit of fun. It's a bit of, if you're familiar with this part of the world, it's kind of pantomime. Like, I loved it, just thinking this is complete comedy more than anything. But like, do you ever get any blowback for these type of segments looking back in them?
No. I mean, if you look at if the online community think that's hilarious, that's great.
Yeah.
Whatever. I got it was a great payday for goofing off. At the time when the Scott Trade Center in St. Louis was chanting "We Want Wrestling," I thought, holy crap. I'm like, whoo. So, I completed the mission and finished. And then the head person in charge at the time looked at me and I was like, wow, they hated it. He goes, that was great. That's what I was looking for. I'm like, all right then. Well, then mission accomplished. And I was hired a week later for being the most complete wrestler the year prior that I could be. Went to Noah that year, wrestled dark matches, had people, promoting me and physically looking good. As far as in my mind, wrestling wise, I needed higher learning, as I explained it. Like, I needed more tutelage. Like, I was as good as I was going to be at the level I was at. I needed, more tutelage to get there. And that's what happened. And that's the match that gave me a contract, which is completely ridiculous. But, I remember when I got back home, Harley, because I owned the gym next to Harley's school.
Yeah.
I bought the gym from him, and I got home and he said, you got yourself a job, didn't you? And I went, I don't know. And sure enough, I got a call that week. So
that was awesome. Yeah, and like obviously then you're reporting down to Deep South Wrestling, just that's being folded up. Then you kind of go down to OVW. Was Paul Heyman still involved in OVW at that stage when you're kind of going down there, or was that a later part?
No, Paul Heyman was there earlier. Because CM Punk was there in 05, 06. Right.
Yeah.
And the new ECW had started. So no, he was long gone out of there. So, and as well as it was, the dying days of being under contract to WWE at that point.
Yeah, so absolutely. Like, obviously, like within a year, I suppose, like at the start of 2008, you did move on from WWE and you kind of go back into the independent circuit. But listen, about 10 years later, then just over 10 years later, you returned to WWE as a coach, working in the Performance Center. And you were like, obviously, you joined just before the world decided to shut down for some reason. Everything went insane. And it was, obviously, you had a bit of back and forth as part of the COVID furloughs at the time, but listen, obviously, didn't last long. You've talked in glowing terms recently and previously about what was like working there, working with such a variety of talent. You've got people who are part of their, I don't know, NIL program back then, but essentially people fresh out of sports or college or whatnot. They've got a completely kind of wide-eyed view of the world. Like, this is all new to me, this is exciting, but you've also got tenured talent. So I read a piece you had recently where you're talking about, to some people you're Coach Guy, some people you're Ace Steel. So like, what was that like working with so many different, in your own words again, like sponges ready to learn from regardless of what background they had?
It's an eye-opener to what we're used to, because it is different. The people that come to my school, the people like myself, we sought this out on our own. So for the athletes to be brought in, it boils down to one thing.
Yeah.
You got to have the love.
Yeah.
If you don't have a love for this industry, you're never going to take to it. Dollar signs won't matter.
Yeah.
It'll drive you to a certain point, but when the tough gets going, the saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And I find that a lot with, and I hope the best for every NIL student that's in there. I just hope they love it, because that is the only way they're going to survive and excel at this. You just saw Odyssey Jones pop up on Raw, and I've been dying to see that guy show up for a long time. Like, he is one of the few that I put the boots on to get in the ring at the Performance Center to lock up with, just so he could feel what it's like to not have a PC guy lock up with him. To lock up with me and for him to treat me so dainty and like, you can make this a little snugger, you can work on that. Like, that's the only way, that is the only way. Even with my veteran talent that I had in there for my classes, for the classes I coach, I put the boots on one day and just had to tie up with them to see where they were at, because we all come from, though we come from much the same on the independents, everybody does things just a little different. And, to get them where they're going and to see guys like that, like Odyssey Jones loves it. He loves it. So I'm so happy for him and hope that just this kicks off and it's just, the career of a lifetime for him. But like I said, it boils down to the love. So it's great to have people that love it, no matter where they come from.
Yeah, you get a great prop. You mentioned Odyssey Jones. When you watch him on NXT the past couple of years, the odd time he does appear and seems to have some sort of concrete program, like his energy more than anything kind of just comes through the screen. I'm sitting here at like whatever time in the morning in Dublin, Ireland, watching it. You also had a great crew of people. You had the likes of Tony D'Angelo, Braun Breaker, Tiffany Stratton. You've kind of made a point of talking about previously. Like, those are guys who don't necessarily have come through the indies, but they're fresh athletes. The guys with a wide-eyed view of the industry. They're there and they've committed wholeheartedly, and that's not always been the case in wrestling. But you've also kind of stressed the importance of fundamentals, particularly kind of people coming through. That's not necessarily prevalent in modern wrestling. What is your kind of view in that modern day style? Because I come from Ireland, where I've got a guy, when I was training previously, there's a guy called Joe Cabray. He used to work he was signed for WWE previously, worked in kind of FCW, NXT. He's kind of come up through the old school system here, where it's very much work over spots. So it's very much concrete around fundamentals as well. So what do you see kind of, I suppose, of the modern classes coming through, say the WWE Performance Center or elsewhere? What do you see as kind of the modern style working to improve as such?
Well, I can tell you this. I watched a match last week with Ren St. Clair and, oh gosh, I can't think of it. Maybe it was a Petrovic girl. I can't remember exactly. But the wrestling they did on the mat and the transitions, I was going, that's either Johnny Mossy or Norman Smiley. Like, I know it. And Norman Smiley is a great wrestling class. And I know Mossy's got some of the girls, so I don't know where it is. It could be Fit for all I know. I don't know. But they're ground-based wrestling and they're staying together. And that is the beautiful foundation. You've got to have that foundation. You've got to have those foundational skills to go on. There isn't one move or one spot that people have paid for a whole pay-per-view to see or a whole show to see. It is just a piece of the puzzle, but it's not even really intricate to anything. Because case in point, you watched a match with myself and William Regal. Is it going to garner, all this, praise? I don't know, but traditionalists love it. People I know that really are into what we do find it fascinating that he and I didn't call anything. We just wrestled. Like, that needs to be brought back. And that's one of the things I bring back. And that's also something I tried to teach the PC as well. It's very hard at the Performance Center because you have to build a television star and you have to build them fast. So that's where I say the love's got to come in, because at some point, Tiffany Stratton's got to love it. Braun Breaker's got to love it. Tony D'Angelo's got to love it. So they could really learn what this is about, because you can't run TV spots on house shows all the time. You'll eat your body up. It's a completely different industry at that point. How do you work the hold? How do you get out of the hold? What are the hope spots? What are, I can just go on and on and on and throw those things. I think the newer wrestlers will find when their bodies break down that they need these things. They need these, they wish they had these tools in their toolbox to begin with. And honestly, that's why I opened a school, because I saw the need for such a thing. I went up to Malachi Black's place the other day, to Tommy Yen's place, and saw his gym. And conversely, he'll come my way. And so we've just done a handshake deal. Like, hey, I think we both care about this industry, which is why we're doing what we're doing. But let's do our best to kind of keep together on regulating. Hey, I'll talk to you about who I got. You talk to me about who you got. If they want to come my way one day, they want to go your way one day. But let's keep tabs on how things go around here, because we both see it from the places we work, and what's missing and what's lost. And that's nothing against the current generation. They just don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, and so you only know what you're exposed to. You're gonna mean like, again, a lot of people, the current generation, come up when PlayStations were a thing. Do you know what I mean? So you're going up through the
Yes.
late 90s, 2000s, suddenly you're doing all the moves in the games, and like that's naturally going to have a knock-on effect down the line. But what like anything in wrestling, sometimes what is old is new again, and that's kind of been the way I've kind of seen certain aspects of wrestling in the last 10 years in particular. You've touched on, you kind of, before I go any further into TNA, touch on your school, obviously the Foundation of Pro Wrestling down in Florida. I was speaking with a guy called Bishop Khan from AEW recently, and he's talking about the importance of these different schools, particularly down in Florida, that are kind of popping up here, there, and everywhere. He's a contracted television talent, but he's going out of his way to go to the likes of Natty and TJ School, the Dungeon. He's going to Devon School,
Yeah.
Team 3D Academy. He's the likes of James Drake and Zap Gibson have opened up their Burning Heart Pro Wrestling School.
Yeah.
So whatever you guys do down in Florida seems to be the home capital of wrestlers and wrestling schools. Their contracted talents in the PC seem to be going out of their way, as well as other companies, to get tenure schools. Like for yourself, people who are eagle-eyed and spend too much time on social media, like myself, will see the likes of, you're talking about Adam Pearce appearing in your school. You got the likes of Zachary Wentz, who's been appearing in your school, and numerous other talents. Like Scott Garland trusts his son to kind of be taken into the business through you. So what's it been like, the feedback, and kind of seeing this kind of critical acclaim so many talents are giving your way as a trainer and coach, as well as your school?
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
It just reaffirms what I wanted to do all along. Like the reason I did this and made this venture. It's scary.
Yeah.
It's a scary venture because it can be thankless. I don't see $1 million being made out of such a thing, which is, funny to say, but I see a need for our industry that I still work in. I'm a producer for TNA. I feel a need, and like I said, we just had Jody Threaded. She came on her own.
Yeah,
that's a competitor who is already signed to a promotion that could have hung out a few days,
yeah,
but instead wanted to come to my gym for 3 hours and sweat her ever-loving butt off, and then continue to do something that I was teaching because the footwork was a little off and what I was looking for was a little off. And she did it over and over again until it was to my liking, because that's what I was teaching that day. That just reaffirms what I'm doing is exactly the right thing. It reaffirms that I've made the right choice. The students I see, for Scotty, what a tremendous compliment for his son that's been around this his whole life. Scotty will come and train with him from time to time. Scotty will be a guest coach for me. Yeah. To have the day Punk came in, Roxanne came in to check out the place. And I was at her tryout. Like I've said this on interviews before, I've had a lot of these people's tryouts, or were their coaches that are now making it on television and getting pulled up once they're ready. And to meet her again and see her and just, yeah, you were at my tryout. Thank you for having me tonight. And training as hard as everybody else in the ring. Like like I said, to hear the praise, it just reaffirms what I'm doing. And I'm just, going forward, 1 foot at a time, just killing it, just looking to build this brand and build, I'm the 51st wrestling school in Florida, and that's great. I do what I do. Everyone else is great. They do what they do. We all have a separate little niche. And I just believe in what I do. I believe in the full power. I believe in the people that I train from the ground up are going to end up being such a credit to our industry.
Awesome. Yeah, like Scott Garland, he's come over to Ireland numerous times the past couple of years, and where he's done seminars, appeared in shows, and I've been fortunate to attend a few of his seminars. Absolute gentleman. And again, like his outlook on wrestling is absolutely unbelievable. So again, it's a huge compliment to you that he's kind of trusting the training of his son with you, because he could possibly do it himself. But like, again, you kind of touched on what is old is new again. The amount of talents that are contracted from numerous different companies, TNA, WWE, AEW, all going out of their way to attend these schools. So there is, in my view, there is a very much a push back towards traditional type wrestling. I think people are seeing like everything's cyclical. I mean, people can see that there's different types of stories. You can see what's happening on television, what's connecting with audiences. So people look to change their approach if they're looking to move possibly between companies as well. But you did touch on it a minute ago, like at the end of 2024, you rejoined TNA as a producer. This has also coincided with TNA as a company kind of going through a massive resurgence post their rebranding, being back to TNA. Obviously, it's incredibly different to what you're doing in your initial TNA run in terms of that's NWTNA, ownership and whatnot. It's essentially a different country and different company you're working for entirely, being under Anthem over in Canada. But what like overall, what's your experience been like working with TNA, just purely as a producer, first of all?
Great. I'm cutting my chops more and more as a producer. I produce for other companies, starting with WWE, giving me that training ground and the basis, and then just, I don't say perfecting it, but just working hard at the craft.
Yeah.
Just like anything else, like to give me an opportunity to work with different talents. It's just like anything. Like How do you get through to someone?
Yeah.
How do you get them to see your vision? If you are asked for your vision, which is another great thing, is that I work with a guy with like Mustafa Ali,
Yeah.
who, when I was dipping out of wrestling, period, he's cutting his teeth on the Chicago Independents. So it's a little full circle. Oh, Ace is my agent. Okay. He'll go, I think we got it. What do you think about this? Like the minute that comes down, okay, awesome. Let's feed off of this. Same with Joe Hendry. Joe Hendry and I just were slammed together, and it's a great union.
Yeah.
For working together, and lo and behold, it's obviously pure coincidence.
Yeah.
That at the same time, this man has just finally hit his stride and caught steam, and it's just an amazing thing to see. And now you get to see what you get to do with, he's one of the most over guys that exist at this moment. He could literally probably sneeze and make it into something, and they would all clap. And but he's doing great. I love the organization. It's a lot of good people. It's a lot of good people that, and it's great with now that NXT's coming in with sending some of their talent to get a different flavor for their students.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to, I'm never, like I said, at that point in 2006, when I said I needed higher learning, you're never going to get any better if you stay working in the same system, same state, same promotion. If you're a big fish, little pond, you need to leave that. You'll never expand, which is why we went all over the U.S.
Yeah.
So for the PC folks that aren't able to do that, for them to get chosen to come over and work some TNA, get some different talent, and if they're allowing it, I hope they see that as the greatest gift, because, man, I love to, when I was in it, I loved to wrestle any and everybody I could. All the different talents I could, who I could lock up with, who I could learn from, the veterans that you have at TNA, like Tommy Dreamer, Lance Storm, Gail Kim, to work with the people that are there, like those veterans that have done things, been places, to work with them and feel, and that's a different feed from over at the Performance Center, where you've got Terry Taylor, Fit Finley. You've just got a lot of great people with a lot of great minds in this. And it's just a cool thing. It's a cool experience. It's obviously meant to happen.
Oh yeah.
It's meant to happen, I'm not a very big spiritual person, but when things are meant to happen, they're meant to, things happen for a reason. And I've been put on this course for a reason. And to have a school, to be put in TNA, Joe Hendry, these things, Punk's back in wrestling.
Sometimes
sometimes things go to shit, for sure. Pardon my French, but
yeah. Well, listen, I'm very much a believer in, like, at the far side of shit times is often the best of times. They can, do you know what I mean? Like, not everybody gets to go through these shit times. They kind of stay the course. They don't put themselves under stress. The far side of stress is usually where growth happens anyway. So that's a huge credit to you. I said to you before we started this interview that, like, Joe Hendry, he's somebody in this part of the world who's been hugely adored and loved, and he's got his own school over in Edinburgh. I've been over a couple of times, one or two seminars. Absolute gentleman. It's funny, like, just seeing from far. Like, again, people maybe in America might consider him an overnight success, but, like, he's had contracts with TNA before. He's had Ring of Honor contracts, and, like, his obviously his in-ring work's improved. But in terms of his presentation, aside from his hair, and he's a bit bigger now, like, there's not a huge. I mean, like, he's had the same theme for a long time. It's mad how, like, sometimes if you stick with something, you keep at it, and you try little tweaks here and there, and suddenly it just clicks, and the whole world suddenly explodes around you. The fact that he's been brought in, like, and he's from TNA to NXT, and he's almost been the focal front of everything that's happening on NXT as well. So a huge credit to him. And he's gone out of his way to kind of put over you, and the impact you personally have had an impact on his work in ring and how he sees things, which is absolutely amazing to see. But, like, as part of that, you've also got to team up with him on camera, which is obviously a bit of a change in course for you over the last number of years. But you're brought in as his manager. Kind of did a bit of a schmoz with Kazarian and Against All Odds. That led to a Chicago flight back in your hometown against Frank Kazarian in mid-June. What was that like to kind of go from, I don't know, out of the fire pit into the fire type cliche analogy or whatever? What was it like to go from 0 to 100 back into the wrestling ring with Frankie Kazarian?
A bit of a whirlwind. It's still a little crazy that happened. We talked about the youthfulness of this industry. Well, I'm 51 years old. At 51, to realize, and Frankie's not much younger than me. I'm not not throwing stones at age, but to think, when I signed up at the Performance Center as a coach, one of the things that was said to me was, I think you know where you're at in your career and this is going to be great for you. And I said, yeah, I'm good. Never wrestling again.
Yeah.
I finished, I had a match with Eric Cannon in Chicago, and that was done. I was done. First match on the card, we had a match. I was done. I said, you know what? I'll peace out on this. I'm happy for that to be my last match. So for the opportunity to present itself again, and to present itself in such a light on a stage like TNA, on a national and global stage, shall we say? It's a global stage. It's not just national; it's a global stage. To be able to represent the Foundation Professional Wrestling, to wear a Harley Race T-shirt on television, to go out there and excel, and then show my students. That's all that was in my head the whole time was keep moving, keep, like, what do you tell your students not to do? And, I got a great compliment from someone that said, man, for a guy that hasn't been doing this, you fit right in, for a long time at any high level, like you look flawless. And I said, wow, thank you. That was my goal. My goal was not to embarrass myself. That was number one. But I had been training in ring, like physically in ring, not just on the outside. No, fall that way, fall that way. I've been in ring hands on. That's, until I'm done and able, to move around, I will be hands on training. And it was just such a cool thing. It was a really cool thing, especially in Chicago. Yes, I know it's a street fight. I would love to have a technical wrestling match, which could happen someday. But just to do that was good stuff. I've been teaching television wrestling for the last few years. Now to actually, even though I did early days TNA, it's not the same. To actually abide by a time, a time schedule. You have this, you have that. You're in break. You have this. You're back for break. Listen to the ref. Do all these things.
Yeah,
I put myself right in everyone's shoes that I'm talking to on the headset all the time. It was very surreal in that respect as well. So, but just overall cool.
It was really cool. I mean, again, like you're part of TNA, whereby you've got a real mix of very experienced talents, very youthful talents, and it's a really nice mix and blend of talents. I suppose like being a TNA producer and the kind of the exponential growth of the last say just 6 to 8 months, more than anything, even 3 to 4 months. Like, where do you see TNA going over the next couple of months to years? Like, do you see further growth? Like, I said this to Alex Shelley recently. My first ever live in-person wrestling show was TNA doing their international tours over here in Dublin in 2009.
Oh,
the event was AJ Styles versus Kurt Angle. Alex Shelley was on the first night was defending the X Division title. The next night he was doing Motor City Machine Guns. Like, we don't get a huge amount of wrestling in Ireland, particularly kind of shows coming around. But like, where do you see TNA kind of going to, and can we ever see TNA becoming a bit more of an international brand as it used to be?
I think so. I think so for sure. I think there's so much talent out there, and I think, as we brought up, like the crew of people, and fortunate to be a part of the crew at the moment, is how we can help you and cultivate talent to take the independence and say, you're going to want to do this instead of this.
Yeah.
And I see what, to lead different talent in there, because a year from now, you probably won't have the same talent, or 2 years from now, depending, as it's the name of the game. A talent grows somewhere and they move on. I'm not saying, people are necessarily moving places. It just is the name of the game. You see LA Knight, Eli Drake had cut his teeth here. I caught a promo this morning that had Drew McIntyre in as well when he was going through his rebuilding phase. His phase, he was in TNA, and you see all these people that went, came through the door. I think the sky's the limit. I think there is room for more growth. I mean, the industry is hot. There's a lot of good things that have been put in place. Management had changed. And with the management change, everybody's embraced that. And that's, it's a hard thing for talents that were here and have been going at it for a couple of years. I also come from a big communication company structure and from another company structure where I've been a part of restructuring on the wrong end of town. Right. And it happens. There's always changes to that. And the best thing you could do is just, put your best foot forward and excel at what you can do and not worry about all the other stuff. And I think it'll all, you've got to obviously make smart decisions, but I think there's a lot of room for growth. I mean, because look at the houses they've done. Montreal was insane.
Mm.
Tampa, Florida last week had 2 weeks ago. I'm sorry, I think it was 2 weeks ago. I forget. Mine goes hazy here, but it was, I think, almost 800 to 900 each night.
Yeah.
It was pretty insane.
Mm-hmm.
And to know that other shows were on television that night, or big PLEs, things like that, and TNA still drew that house. Like, I heard it when I had both of Joe Hendry's matches both nights, and I'm just like, play the music, man. Like, look at this crowd. Like, they were just excited to be and see wrestling. One of my students came to the show with his mom, and they were just like, what a great night. I was like, I didn't get a chance to go out and see them. I was busy running around, but they were like, what a great night of wrestling. Thanks so much. And same the night previous, like, another student had come to watch, and just mind blown. It just, wrestling's hot, and when it's good, it's good.
Yeah, and like, when it's good, it's good. And this past weekend, I was at a couple of different independent shows here in Ireland where TNA champions were represented. Nick Nemeth was over here. He's facing LJ Cleary,
nice.
who signed with Noah from over this part of the world. And blew my mind at how good it was. Like, I guarantee he's a guy under 25, but he's European wrestling's MVP's his moniker, but he's the hardest working wrestler in Europe. I guarantee within 12 months, be on your radar, WWE's radar, or elsewhere. Mike Bailey was in a match with Robbie X. He might be a competitor you're familiar with. Like, it was stupidly good. So TNA were huge representatives across the weekend. OTT did a show in Wolverhampton in England, which drew a sold out crowd of over 1,000. Saturday in Dublin, 2,500. Sunday, 500 in Belfast. TNA represented across all three is absolutely incredible. So I say wrestling's hot again, but TNA's hot again, and that kind of being those TNA champions being part of the show was a huge drawing point of that. But OTT as well, the Irish wrestling talents. If you have any say in kind of talents being signed, I invite you to check out OTT on demand and see Scrapper Mania weekend. It's absolutely incredible. But legitimately, as somebody who's watched far too much wrestling over the last number of years, it's the best weekend of wrestling I've ever seen at an independent level. So just if you happen to come across your page, have a look.
I have no say whatsoever, but I would love to watch it. Nick Nemeth's on, just, man, he's on a tear. He's doing great. He's doing his best work. Speedball Mike Bailey is someone I've come to know since working in this company, and he's a special dude, man. He is. I produced. He and Mustafa Ali, I produced that match, and to see what to be a part of that, like, to be a part of him winning in Montreal, and the Earl Hebner thing, like, a lot of that, like, the whole thing, energy, like, it felt like I was in the match type of thing. But yeah, no, I would love it if you can link me to that some way, somehow. I would love to take a look.
Promise you. Sorry, somebody else you might be familiar with, Danhausen, was on the show and he won the NLW championships. It was amazing. Yeah, it was absolutely. Listen, it's a show for everybody, and it was a huge spot in the show as well. So it was absolutely amazing. But listen, you've been incredibly generous with your time, Ace. You've got so much going on, be it across TNA, be it across the Foundation of Pro Wrestling. The end of this month, my sister's birthday, actually, August 22nd. Happy birthday, Tara. You've got Joe Hendry running a workshop with you guys in the Pro Wrestling School. Somebody that the whole world is in love with a minute, but people as part of the world have a huge fondness for as well. Do you have any other projects on the horizon? Where can people check these out?
The foundationofprowrestling.com, that's the website. But I'm very active on Instagram, either at Aces of Steel, coincides with the Foundation of Pro Wrestling on Instagram itself, which you'll see all the videos. I'll post training videos. I'll let you know of everything upcoming, of the people that have popped in, information about training. I've actually got an international student in right now from Spain. He's training with me. So he is our very first. So I'm excited to keep filtering that in, having someone come down and, learn our way. And he's been taking to it great. And, for the things he's gotten to see in the last couple of weeks, just the people that have come in, he was just, he's just taken aback by everything we got going on. And yes, the Joe Hendry, I branded it a workshop. When I do seminars, I call them workshops because I work in the ring. You will actively break a sweat. It's not just me telling stories. It's 3 hours of let's work on some mechanics. Let's see what I can do to up your game just that little bit. And that's what Joe's there to do. And what a marketing genius, obviously, like you said, and talking about believing in himself, no pun intended. Now everyone believes in the guy, right?
Yeah.
But no, a guy who's bet on himself each and every time. And I employ everyone to come to this and come meet him. It's a unique opportunity that he is here in the States, because give it another year or a few months and you're not going to be able to touch this guy. You're not going to be able to, you'll see him entering and exiting arenas, and the meet and greets will probably be the only way. As far as getting him in ring to pick his brain, you're probably just going to have to be on a show with him somewhere.
That's absolutely incredible. And listen, the last number, the 5 years in particular, since you kind of returned to WWE as the PC, you've had a hand in so many of the biggest moments and biggest characters that come through wrestling in the last number of years. You touched on somebody even like Odyssey Jones coming back to WWE, obviously the dog collar match, etc., over in AEW, and now in TNA, you're
Oh
producing
yeah.
like the Joe Hendry and whatnot. You've had a huge imprint on what people appreciate in wrestling now and people how they view it over the last number of years, where previous it might have been a different style of wrestling. You brought back, as we touched on throughout this interview, what is old is new again through your kind of views and your beliefs within the wrestling system. So I want to thank you very, very much for everything you've done.
Oh,
5 years and throughout your career. And thank you for being so generous for your time today as well.
oh, thank you, Mark. I very much appreciate it. And it's the folks that did the work. I love working with them. It takes a village. So it's great to have all of us with the same goal.